Well,
Oh, you can go ahead.
I don't know if I put it. It was Dr. Dot Carly.
Okay. Cool. All right. Bye.
Bye, Tanisha. Thank you. All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Black and Mental Health panel on Black Women and Rest. We are excited to have you all here with us. We have an amazing panel planned for you tonight. We thank you all for taking some time out of your evening to join us as we talk about you taking more time out of your evening to rest in the future. On behalf of Black and Mental Health, I'd like to thank you all for coming. My name is Dr. Carrie Kirk, and I'll be the moderator for this evening. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and assistant professor at MedStar Georgetown University Hospital, and I'm a proud co-founder of Black and Mental Health, which is an international organization that was founded last year by mental health professionals and graduate students who connected on Twitter, of all places. It has grown into a wonderful community that it is today, and we are excited to welcome you to this fruitful discussion on Black women resting, both their minds and their bodies in this crazy world. And we know that our minds and bodies are intricately connected, and we know that there's no physical health without mental health, and our physical, nor can our mental health thrive without rest. So a few housekeeping items for this evening. We do have some targeted questions that we're gonna get to, and we will welcome questions in the chat for the on YouTube. And then we'll try to get to as many questions as we can within the hour. And to help us with that, I'd like to thank our Black and Mental Health co-founders and organizing team that are working diligently behind the scenes to help bring you this panel tonight. So thank you, team. And with that, we will hop right into introducing our amazing panel. First, we have Dr. Gabrielle Daniel. She's a physiatrist specializing in non-narcotic pain relief strategies and chronic pelvic pain. She emphasizes building trust between her patients and herself, which naturally allows for patient sharing and insight building around wellness. She received her medical doctorate from the Howard University, HU, and completed both her internship and residency in physical medicine and rehabilitation at the University of Pennsylvania Hospital. So welcome, Dr. Daniel.
Hi, thank you.
Next, we have Dr. Carly Hampton. She's a physical therapist in the DMV and specializes in sport and orthopedic therapy modalities. She brings a wealth of knowledge about injury prevention and wellness. She's a certified running gait analyst, okay? She received her doctorate in physical therapy from Old Dominion University and completed her undergraduate training at the North Carolina A&T State University. Welcome, Dr. Carly. Next, we have, I'm about to call you Dr. Arena Sargent. See, I'm putting it out into the universe. Next, we have Arena Sargent. She is the founder and CEO of Hooky Wellness, a burnout relief consulting and innovation firm. Her personal experience drove her to take on this complex and common syndrome to equip professionals with the knowledge and practical tips to navigate workplace wellness. Arena has an MBA from Kelley School of Business at Indiana University and has worked in brand innovation at top companies, including Nestle and Intuit. She is an initiative member at the Global Wellness Institute and a contributing writer for Well and Good. So welcome, Arena.
Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. And last but certainly not least, we welcome Dr. Stacy Y. Pipes Joyner, all of the names. She is a clinical social worker and founder of Preparing Us for Social Harmony, or PUSH, which is a personal development program for high school youth. She used her personal journey to become a champion for youth mental health. She received her PhD and master's from the University of Southern California, and we are excited for her to come and share her knowledge with us today. Welcome, Dr. Stacy.
Thank you. Wonderful to be here with you all. Thank you.
You're most welcome. All right, so esteemed panelists, let's jump right in. From your vantage point as Black women professionals, why is rest so important?
It's just a time that you really need to recharge. And really, you have to take that separate time out of the day to reevaluate your roles and how and your own worth and how you feel about yourself. That's, I mean, it's a form of self-care, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Absolutely necessary.
I also feel like rest is kind of like the foundation of health, whether it's mental and or physical. Taking time, like she said, self-care, taking time to rest is what's really going to allow you to like reset and refocus and reinvent and rebuild. It's a point in time where you try to prevent a burnout, essentially.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was a great segue.
I was-
Like the assist, you're absolutely right. I completely agree. Especially for Black women, like we are last to be taken care of very often. And then in current day, when you think about everything that is going on, societal behaviors, this is adding up. And for some reason, everything seems to end up on the shoulders of Black women. And so we don't rest. That strength that we are known for is just diminishing every day. And there's so much power in our community. And so we are needed more than ever, though we're not here to solve everybody's problem. But that rest is what allows us to keep going and allows us to be as magical as we are.
Absolutely. I always think of that meme where it's like, forget it, tell a Black woman to do it or have a Black woman do it. And it's like, yes, we can, but at the same time, we have to rest when we're doing all that stuff. Absolutely. Dr. Stacy, you want to jump in there?
Absolutely. In my opinion, I think that rest is the ultimate act of self-love. It is one thing that we have absolute control over, but yet it's the one thing that we always neglect. We put it on the back burner because we want to put everything first. Right. I feel like rest gives us permission to put ourselves first and to make ourselves a priority.
Absolutely. That's so important. And if we're not putting ourselves first, we can't do all the things for others that we tend to take on. So if we're not filling up our own cup and nourishing ourselves before we move on to being students, being professionals, being moms, being aunties, and all the wonderful things that we aren't able to do for others as we would want to. So absolutely, so important. And thank you all for sharing your vantage points. Moving on to the second question. In your professional disciplines and in the spaces that you occupy, what are some of the consequences and symptoms of a lack of rest for Black women?
I don't know. Go ahead, Ariana. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, well, burnout is absolutely it. So in the workplace, especially why I like to talk about burnout, and it's my way in, is that it is tangential to so many other things. And if I could do the honor of taking some stuff off of all of your plates, that would be great. So I view it as more of a prevention for more severe mental health issues and challenges. So burnout is one of the first ways that that extra pressures of the world shows up. And so it is also so easy to ignore. And so with Black women and individuals in high performance environments in general, you're so used to giving so much that you don't realize when your tank is empty until it is completely dry. And so consequences of that can really start with performance in the workplace and then get really inside and get into your mental, your emotional, and your physical health. So it's all about doing something before you need a prescription, in my opinion, or before you absolutely need to take a break. So consequences are severe for you as an individual, with all of your relationships and how you connect with others, with your goals and what you want to do with your life and your time. And it can also affect those around you, because when you're carrying all that burden, when you're carrying all that stress, you pass that forward just as well as you would pass joy forward. So I think we've all been around those people where you're like, what happened to you? And if you can help that and being that person, rest can really come into play there. So consequences are both mental, physical, emotional. It's all across the board there.
Absolutely. So multi-layered. There's multi-layered consequences of not getting enough rest. Absolutely. Who wants to go next?
Okay, I'll jump in. I work with children, or specifically youth, Black youth, and there's a lot of trauma in the area that I work with. My own experience is with childhood trauma and having experience in it. I know firsthand how it affects your ability to rest. You know, once that trauma occurs, you're at a halt. You get into fight and flight mode. You don't know how to turn your mind off because it's constantly playing over and in your head over and over and over again. So it starts at a young age, and then, you know, when you're traumatized. But if you carry that on into your adulthood, even though time and space has given you the opportunity to pull away from the trauma, it's still there in the background, and it can impact your ability to turn your mind off. And it impacts in other ways, you know, it affects how you parent your children. It interacts with how you interact with your relationships. And that's something that you've carried from your childhood. So the ability to rest, the consequences of not being able to rest, certainly from a young age, is that it carries over into adulthood if not treated. And it could be very, very detrimental to your physical, spiritual, and psychological well-being.
Absolutely. And even if for those who haven't experienced trauma or don't know that they've experienced trauma, the consequences can still be very similar. So even if you don't know that you've had a traumatic experience, which we see a lot in clinic, that it's like people that don't know that they've been traumatized or that they've had a traumatic experience. And then you start pulling back the layers and realizing how things like rest or kind of not being able to rest because of hypervigilance and certain things really impacts their day-to-day functioning. So that's such an important point. So Dr. Daniel and Dr. Carly, you all are our mind-body people. So you work directly with the body. Can you all speak to some things that you see in your practice when women come in and have not been rested or are not getting the kind of rest or relaxation that they deserve?
So a lot of times when people don't take the adequate amount of time to rest, not only just physically, but even like mentally resting your mind, you are more likely to put yourself in a position where you're going to get injured. You'll also put yourself in a position where you're not likely to heal as properly as you should. And instead of taking the time to rest so that your body can recover from, say, you've had an injury or surgery, and if you keep the mindset of the like, no pain, no gain, I got to push through and I can't stop, you're more likely to set yourself back, and then you'll be out of whatever it is that you were doing even longer. And if you think, for example, like Simone Biles, how dangerous gymnastics is, and for her to realize that she needed to take the time to rest for her mental health sake, because, you know, she's losing where she is in space when she's flipping. And instead of her feet landing on the ground, she could land on her neck, you know, and she could not only end her career, but end her life. And so rest is so important. Very important.
Absolutely. So that speaks to that superwoman badge, S on our chest, the cape, all the things that we take on sometimes as Black women. Sometimes we can't do it all. Sometimes we have to step and pause so we don't injure ourselves. We're not kind of operating on autopilot and then end up doing something physically that it's hard for us to recover from because we haven't rested. So that's such a great point.
I was just going to kind of bring it all, like everyone has said some really excellent points here, especially as far as like bringing it into adulthood and performance and possibly injuring yourself. I can't really add to that because they speak for themselves, honestly. But what I see when I see my patients, they're normally at that point, they have apathy. There's apathy, there's indifference to everything when you have not properly rested, especially like for just being a Black woman and seeing other Black women. It can look like irritability. I might know what you're going through, but someone else may not. The struggle is not well understood. Indifference towards your children or towards your partner. And as far as it could be amotivational, and really borderlining, you know, you can work yourself into a depression also, into something more severe. And that will, like Dr. Hampton said, could end up where you can end up hurting yourself or injuring yourself. And when I see patients that are not really resting like they're supposed to, it manifests. It's called somatization. It manifests physically, and you start having pains and aches and issues in places that you never had before because you aren't taking care of yourself and resting your mind and resting your body and resting your soul also.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a great segue into our next question. I'm going to toss that back to you, Dr. Daniel. How does a lack of rest impact your body's ability to heal?
When your body is not I guess I can say it from another perspective. If you rest too much, your body will just atrophy, and that just means that your muscles will start to deteriorate. You won't be as strong. You won't be able to do things. If you don't rest enough, you can, just metaphorically speaking, you'll tear a hamstring if you try to work out all the time and you never stretch. You will hurt yourself some kind of way. You will mentally, you can get into places like paranoia, hallucination, and that's on the very, very severe end. You can end up hurting other people as well. Consequences of it, your body will just stop. You will stop one way or another, whether it's your interactions with others, whether it's your partnerships with others, like in your relationship, it will end. Whatever the stimulus is has to go away. Mm-hmm. And it can turn out pretty bad. So.
Yeah. Absolutely. So on the physical side, too much rest is not good because the kind of the wasting away, or the not activating your muscles, not activating your mind, things like that. And then not resting at all also has the other spectrum. So
right.
There's a happy point right in the middle, or right somewhere in that sweet spot, that we want to find the adequate amount of rest for ourselves, mm-hmm. so that we can function optimally.
And it's not the same for every single person. And I think that we also, as Black women, need to be able to give each other the space for that amount of rest. It's essential, like what we were saying to our initial question.
Absolutely. Anybody else want to add to that one? And from the spaces you're working in, from your vantage point, and how recovery, or how just progression of life goes for the Black woman that you all encounter when there's not enough rest?
From more of like the physical aspect, to kind of further go into that, when you're exercising or recovering from, a sporting event or something of that nature, you create little micro tears in your muscles. And what happens is that during rest, your body releases cells to kind of come in to repair those things, right? And so that repairing process helps you to heal and your muscles to grow, and so you get stronger. But if you don't allow that rest period and you're just continually tearing, now you're going to cause yourself to have an issue. So think about like a stocking. You got a little run in it, and if you keep pulling, that run's just going to keep tearing, mm-hmm. And you don't want to do that to your body, especially when your goal is to get stronger or to get better, or, to improve. So resting when training or exercising is really important as well.
Absolutely. I love that, the analogy of the stocking run, because you already know when you see it, it's if you don't sit still, it's going to go. It's going to go. It's bad.
Put the clear nail polish on it.
Nail polish, right. You're trying to hold it together, and it may not necessarily work. And I hear you, that applies to performance, and also kind of general functioning as well. That was a beautiful analogy. The running the stocking can be you getting up to function every day and perform and do what you need to do too. And the physical exertion that may come with that. So that's I love that analogy.
I would add on to that, from a matter of like performance in the workplace, is if you're not getting rest and you think working, typically the first reaction of burnout is to work harder, to try to still check all your boxes. And that becomes a slippery slope, snowball, running your stockings, where it just keeps going. And no matter how much clear polish you put on there, there's another one. You just need to throw it out. You're giving me flashbacks. I haven't worn stockings in I don't know how long. But yes, I was definitely a victim of that. I don't want to use word victim, but that's what comes to mind. But as soon as it started, it became a matter of, but there's so much work to do. And that list adds up instead of going down. And so you view rest as optional. And it's a behavior to really break through and to really like recognize that like what your natural inclination is to do is the opposite of what you should do. So I often see where people are not getting rest and that just amplifies and they get less and less rest and then they're less productive and then they need more time and they need to do more. And so those typically end up in a place where they have to take a larger break to sort of restart versus if you had taken smaller breaks throughout, you've been able to pace yourself. So it's all about sustainable performance. But so often like hustle culture is more than a phrase, it's a conditioning. And we're so used to just driving and not realizing that that's literally not sustainable. You and I have talked about it 50 million times, but
absolutely,
rest is your gas. So how to replenish. And it is much needed, but rarely talked about.
Absolutely. And then sometimes that break you have to take to get your energy back ends up causing other things to happen that you didn't want to happen. So maybe you missed a deadline. Maybe you weren't able to complete something that you needed to complete. Maybe you weren't able to get some kind of important task done because the opportunity passed when you had to take that extended rest. So such an important point. Dr. Stacey, do you want to speak on that from how you are your organization, the things that you see?
Absolutely. So I deal with high schoolers. And so the pressure is on starting that freshman year all the way to senior year. They're already planning and plotting. My kids are overachievers. So, the sky's the limit. And that's what I teach them. But what I'm seeing is that they, even when they're scheduling their classes for the year, it's that pressure to succeed, to be perfect, to overachieve, to do better than their parents. And they are already setting the groundwork for a life of unrest, basically. They're already learning how to not make themselves a priority. And they feel that powering down is boring, So it's my job to catch them now while they're young, while there's still time to instill in them these good habits of literally penciling in some time to rest. I have them all create a calendar, and on their calendar, they are required to pencil in at least 10 minutes of power down time. And that can be, it doesn't have to be, meditation, because they all laugh at meditation. They think, they laugh at that. But it could be putting in your AirPods and listening to some music. It could be writing in your journal. It could just be getting up from your desk and going outside and getting some fresh air. But they are required at least 10 minutes. I would prefer more, but give me 10 and we're good. So it's important to instill in them now. And then we as parents need to be examples of that as well. It's easy for me to say that, but if I'm not practicing that in my own household, then I'm being a hypocrite. So practicing what I preach and making an example in my own house, as well as with the kids that I work with, is key. So I'm working with the young, y'all. I'm trying to do the work.
Right, so key. And then what you raise highlights the point that even as we're trying to take care of ourselves as Black women, we're modeling for those who are looking up to us. So our children, if you're an auntie, a teacher, a mentor, somebody who's responsible for the lives of young people, we really do have to practice what we preach in terms of getting our own rest so that they see that power down isn't boring, is mandatory, and it's not optional. You have to set this stuff down and rest. You have to put down all the bags. You have to do all those kind of things. So that's a good way to help frame it from maybe some outside of ourselves and outside of our direct communities, but also like the babies are watching, and how do we teach them that rest is a priority and not boring. So I could see where they could get that from, but powering down is not boring. Man, that's the way you said that. Powering down is boring. So absolutely, we need to be good examples as well. So we'll move on to the next question. I see that we have maybe a couple questions in the chat too, so we'll keep going. So the next question is, how can we do better at finding space to rest?
I'll jump in on that and sort of touch on the other question about reasons what Black women are not resting. I think what I've seen is a lot of it deals with giving yourself permission and the guilt that comes with it. You get so used to just doing the most and giving everybody and all the stuff that's on your list that you never end up on that to-do list. And so when you think about it, but if I do this, or if I sit down, then something's not getting done. So-and-so is not getting what they need. This person isn't supported. And so it becomes a matter of what's going on with everybody else that you forget that you have to look out for you as well. So from a matter of like, I always come from the workplace angle because it's more digestible sometimes, but is really clarifying your goals, priorities, and expectations. So if you're trying to find space for rest, you have to get space from somewhere else. You have to get time from somewhere else. And so it's not a matter of you're not going to do anything, but make sure where you are exerting your energy, it's on something that is worthwhile. So whether it's at home, whether it's at work, whether it's in your volunteering, whether it's with your kids or your family or your friends, what is worth your time? What is important to you? What do you value? And recognize that it can change over time. So one period in your life, you may want to give your all to these volunteering organizations, or you may want to give your all to work, but then in comes 2020 and in comes 2021 and your values shift and things are more important. So just giving yourself grace to change and then reflecting on what's important to you in that period of time and then basing your time, energy, and effort accordingly. Saying no is another big one that is hard to do. So boundaries, I'll let someone else take the whole boundary conversation, but that is real. But it's really like I don't know about y'all, but I grew up in a house where work was it. Like I am from Detroit. This is what we did. My parents were always working. Yeah, all these jobs. So it's just what you get used to. I had 3 jobs from when I could have a job. Like I was that person. My friends call me the Dominican off of In Living Color. Like, yes. So I've been going through this whole deconditioning myself. And it took me to get into the most intense stages of burnout to be like, oh, something's got to change. And my therapist literally put me on timeout. She was like, oh, girl, this is not what we're here for. I was on leave and still working. So the exciting thing is that the culture is talking about it. We're like making it, it's not just talking about normalizing it, but we are normalizing it. People who are leaders across different industries and are using their voice to illustrate the change that we're trying to see. Because yes, the baby's watching. Like one of the most jarring things for me, I have a couple nieces and I remember one of them especially is always doing the most. And we did this session. She has this volunteer organization, this nonprofit for young women. And I just know what was happening on the other side of all these balls she was juggling. And to hear her say that I influenced her, I was like, ooh, wait, ooh. When are you gonna slow down? Like just recognizing how we can influence, even though we overlook it because we're so used to like, I don't know, I'm used to stepping back into the shadows. But by changing your behavior, you can create this ripple effect that literally the world needs. So you just have to bust through the guilt. I hope someone else has some real tactics on it because I'm like, you just have to. You just have to keep pushing because the guilt will be there, but you have to change.
Well, I think that's still real. I think framing it as you have to find the rest and you have to go toward the rest. I think that's still a very valid way to frame that. We can also look at it in a way that, okay, so what will happen if I don't go towards the rest? And if I don't go in that direction, then these things may happen. And so that's another way to think about it, to where it may not be something you have to do, like where you're telling yourself you have to do it, where you're in the mirror with your finger pointed at yourself. More so like, okay, so what would the consequences be? And then if you're thinking about the consequences, you can find ways to motivate yourself to do what it is that you need to do to go towards the rest. So it's a way of saying have to without saying have to, if that doesn't work for some people. And some people that absolutely works. And then that ties back, what you were saying ties so well back to Dr. Stacy's point in terms of if you're influencing your niece, and whether you're on the way to burnout or you're on the way to thriving, like it's a real thing. She's watching everything you do. And that motivates me. So I have nieces too. So trying to be good examples and good role models being a good role model for them is really important. Anyone else?
I was going to say, even knowing your triggers, like what things bother you, what things cause you increased stress, what people, environments, institutions, situations do you feel unsafe, or do you feel that are toxic, things, you being consciously aware of those things and knowing that you're going to be placed in them, or you've been in them too long, knowing that you need to maybe take a step back, or say, oh, I can't add anything else to my plate because I'm dealing with all this other stuff that I already know bothers me, realizing again, like what bothers you.
Absolutely. Finding those triggers and knowing which ones are going to activate you. So important.
I wanted to add that, and I'm just speaking from being a physician, and the culture in being a physician is that you work until the work is done. And when the work is done, you go take a small nap and then come back to work. And it's always a selfless sort of, it's a very selfless occupation. But at the same time, as I may dare say this, as Black women and just as physicians and people, to prevent burnout and to prevent or to do better at finding space, is sometimes you have to tell yourself that whatever field you're in, if you think of it this way, if you died tomorrow, how quickly would your job be filled? And how much are they going to come to your funeral? Are they going to pay for it? They might send a flower. And I know that sounds crass, but if you work yourself to the point of burnout, where we're having all these consequences, where you're dealing with mental health issues and you're exhibiting these behaviors before your children, know that the only person that can care about you is you. So finding the space with knowing what triggers you, what feels like a safe space, and giving yourself permission to be able to say, I don't like this. I don't like the way this makes me feel, and I'm not going to do that. That is not from a Black woman's perspective, that is not, you're not angry. You are not difficult to deal with. You are finding what works for you. And we all live life and we all have to find these traits for us, but it is not okay to work and work and work and work and work until you're dead. And then someone sends you a peace lily to whoever has survived. And that's the end of you. It's okay to live your life, find spaces, find the things that you do like, and give yourself time for. And that is sometimes what I have to tell myself. If I don't give myself time to be able to rest, if I die tomorrow, who's going to care? Someone will say, she should have taken more time to care for herself. And that does not need to be your story. That shouldn't be your story. And you're allowed to take care of you just as much as you take care of everyone else. So I suggest personally finding, I don't know, it sounds weird, but finding that extreme narrative that you need to remind yourself that in the most extreme cases, you have to live inside of your head and your body. So make sure that it feels good.
Woo! Everything, all the things, everything you just said, all of it.
I wanted to add something onto it. We are at a unique time where employers are saying, take care of yourself. Take them at their word and call them on it if they want to act different when you do it. This is very interesting, where it's like they keep doing all this stuff. They keep saying this. They keep adding on benefits. They keep saying, take your time. Now is the time to capitalize it. Take that card, check in that card, because if they have a problem with that behavior, then it's a mismatch with what they are declaring. And we may not get another situation like this where it's like calling you on your bluff. And all companies won't be perfect, and all but the ones that are trying, they are trying. And if there are the ones that are just bluffing, you would rather know than not. So this is an opportunity where it's like, okay, all right, you want to say this? Well, let's see what really happens. And it's not a matter of not doing anything. It's not a matter of not doing work, but it's a matter of changing the system within the power that you have. So if you want things to change, start making those changes. They can be gradual and incremental. It like small things, using your vacation days and making like one long weekend a month. Just add one day, take a Friday off, every one Friday every month, and then you have a long weekend or a Thursday and a Monday. So using those little things to increase like the space for yourself is a way to like start changing that culture and start influencing others. Because trust, your friends are going to see and be like, why are you always on a break? And realize they can do that themselves. So call them on it, try it, let's go. Because as you said, your role will be fulfilled. The JD will be written in 2 days.
Absolutely. And that's the unfortunate part of when we push too hard and then we're no longer able to do. Somebody else will be found to do, and there will be somebody else that fills your role. And we like to think of ourselves as irreplaceable or unique, or in a lot of cases we are. So we all contain some kind of magic within us, and we function in ways that nobody else can do what we do to an extent, right? So there's a baseline that whatever you do, other people can do it. That's why you're in whatever field where you're doing whatever it is that you're doing. To a certain point in your field, everyone should be able to do the basics. Your magic is going above and beyond that. But if you can't perform, then nobody cares about the magic. They just want the baseline, right? They just want whatever it is that they put you in that position for, and that can be replaced. There's enough of us out there doing enough things that operate like that. So, woo, y'all are dropping some gems right now. We do have some questions in the chat. Do you all want to add on to that before we move on? Dr. Stacy, Dr. Carly?
And I'm sitting here just taking it all in. I'm being nourished. So I'm being a little selfish. So
but okay, you rested.
Yes, I'm resting. I agree across the board. But one of the things I did want to say is one of the reasons why Black women, the whole thing with Black women and unrest is that it's generational. It is definitely generational. We can take it back to the ancestors. We know what Big Mama in the house had to deal with.
Yep.
And we've carried that mindset of we can't rest. We ain't got time for that. We gotta solve everything. So we need to break that generational curse and allow rest to be an everyday part of our lives. It has to be. So change should start today, right now. And it is definitely possible.
I agree. And in terms of when someone said earlier how Black women are thought of to be like super women, and how we're supposed to be the strong Black women. And I feel like, okay, yeah, we are super women. And at the same time, taking rest is a superpower,
Absolutely.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely. So on that note, the question that deals with what we're talking about right now is, can you describe for us some of the reasons that Black women are not resting?
Because of what Dr. Hampton just said. Because we are, and Dr. Stacy, we are supposed to be these, immovable like creatures that can tolerate and take on anything. And I think there was that meme that you said earlier. There's a meme that says,
"Yeah,
fine, I'll do it," said the Black woman. No, right. That's why we're not resting, but we also have these stigmas attached to us that we're also trying to shake off, that angry, that irritable, that we're not resting because I dare say we're too busy code switching. We're too busy having to go from into the hospital or into our workplace, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, unrested, knowing that we need a break, but we got to do all these things that are piled on our desk and whatnot. Then we have to go home and we have to be moms or single moms or wives or whatever it is that you have to do. And you have to take care of the house, and and a lot of things are taboo. Some things just have not changed with the times. We are no longer living in a place where Black women, or women for that matter, are just housewives and just have to be at home and clean and do, and not saying that because that's a full-time job, but we have to do that and work now. And so we're not resting because we're not really, the mindset has not changed. And now we're glamorizing this superwoman, and it's not cute. It's not cute because we do need time. We are people. We're people. We're not machines.
We are not.
We need rest. We have emotions. We have feelings. And it looks like every time you see somebody on a vacation or taking a break, it's dubbed as lazy, or it's dubbed as like you're not doing the things that you're supposed to do. So, the sooner you can tune all of that out and just say, you know what, nobody else is living my life and everybody else should mind their business.
Right.
Then I think we'll finally create our own space, enough of our own space to be able to say, well, I need a break. And whenever you need a break is okay. And also empowering yourself to say no. And that's a complete sentence.
Complete sentence. No. Period is a complete sentence.
I can't do it. No, I can't. No time. And you don't have to explain yourself. You are autonomous, you're beautiful, and you've gotten where you need to be. You deserve a break every now and then.
Absolutely. So that's a great segue into the next question in the chat. How can we as Black women help teach our loved ones to accept that we are resting? That's a loaded one. Dr. Stacey, I see the wheels.
Well, okay. So how can we as Black women help teach, etc., our loved ones to accept? By just doing it. It is not my job to teach you that I am resting. I shouldn't have to explain to you why I'm not picking up the phone, why I'm not answering your email, why I'm not, swiping up to read your DM or whatever. I'm resting. Right. And just respect that space. That's the best way to do it, is just by example. In my opinion, it sounds harsh maybe, but that's how I roll. Really, I don't have time or energy. I've already spent time and energy doing what I have to take care of on a day-to-day, but to have to take time to teach someone or educate someone about my need to rest, I can't think of a better way to do that than just to show them. And hopefully they'll catch on and apply that to their own selves. But me personally, I'm not explaining. I'm just doing.
I'm on the same page, because when you have to explain, I feel like you might be adding more stress to your plate, because now I have to dive into all of my stuff and explain to you what I'm going through and why I need to rest. It's unnecessary. So I agree. I feel like take the rest and you'll figure it out.
You'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So it could be harsh, but
yes.
Well, I mean, sometimes this gets into boundaries a little bit, right? So if we are taking the rest and we need the rest, it's okay to set the boundary around wherever it is that we lay to take the rest. And when you set those boundaries, you're not putting anyone else at a disadvantage. You are putting yourself at an advantage. And that's what the point of resting is. Right. And so wherever it is, it's the imaginary boundary, just draw it and then come what may. And if there's other things that come from that, that's data. You can learn from how people react to you or respond to you if you need to take a break, but they don't want you to, or they don't allow you to, or they don't create the space for you to. That's data for you to use however it is you want to. But you're going to eventually have to use that data, because you do need to create that space And drawing those boundaries, to speak specifically to the question, that's how we teach others around us how to love us, is by drawing those boundaries and sharing, you know what, I can't do it right now. Or if we're going through something or something is happening, not being so quick to respond, not doing all the things for all the people. It's okay to draw those boundaries, like Dr. Daniel was saying earlier. So we have another question. I've once heard...
Can I add one thing to that? When you are overdue on your own rest, you don't have any energy to teach others. All of your energy is going to rest. But one other thing that I've found to be effective is invite them to rest, invite them to create boundaries. So when I have something heavy and I'm trying to talk to, and I need to get it out, sometimes I'm trying to make it more regular when I talk to friends to say, do you have space? Like, do you have space to listen, to be here for this? Because especially now, everyone does not have space to be there and to listen to heavy stuff. And so little things like that can help set a tone that makes them do it with others. And so we're reducing this passion stress forward that is going on right now, and setting those examples. So it's inviting them to find rest, inviting them to create boundaries, and to create new ways of functioning with others. So I think that invitation is also something that you can do.
Absolutely. It's a great perspective, great spin on that.
Mm-hmm.
So the next question is, I've once heard that rest is a form of resistance. How can we infuse rest into school-wide classroom practices to support our Black, Indigenous, and students of color?
Oh, I see in the parentheses. All right. That's a really good question. So what I've done is I've actually infused it in my curriculum. I teach it. I have a whole segment on self-care. And in there, I teach them various different types of self-care. You know, whether it's meditation or dancing like no one's watching, or, you know, things that, you know, that the young people can identify with. But it has to be learned through example as well. Again, like I stated earlier, if I'm not practicing what I'm preaching, it's gonna go through one ear and out the other. And you know, infusing in our kids that, instilling in our kids that it's not a form of resistance. You know, resting is, you know, that's your right. You know, that you are in control of that part of your life. So why not use it to your advantage? You're not resisting anything. You're not resisting finishing your assignments. You're not resisting practice, you know, with your extracurricular activities. You're actually, you know, allowing your body to recharge so you can, you know, do better in those things, so you can perform better. So it's definitely doable. It's, you know, that age group is difficult because, again, they think rest is boring. They look at, you know, rest as something that us old folks do. But it's about changing the mindset and packaging it in a way that they can identify. It doesn't always have to be, you know, like I said, meditation or sleep. Even rest takes on many forms. As long as you're allowing your mind, your body, and your spirit to power down in a space that you are comfortable in, that's rest. So, but it needs to be taught, especially now. Our kids are dealing with, you know, they're in school and they're scared about this pandemic, and no one's really listening. So I spend about 15, 20 minutes of my sessions giving them space to express their feelings about that. They're very anxious and they're tired. They're tired of us grown folks thinking that they don't know enough, that they aren't, you know, smart enough to figure things out. So they are listening, but, you know, it is important. I feel that it should be taught, you know, in the actual high schools, you know, aside from my classroom. It should be a part of daily curriculum, but it's definitely in mine.
Absolutely. Thank you you have your unique perspective on that. So thank you for sharing. In the interest of time, we're going to move down to the last question I see here. Can you all discuss effective ways to rest for women who have never done this and don't feel? What are some things right at home that they can do? So how can they use their surroundings to rest?
I love this one. So I was very much that person that cannot rest. I don't know how to turn my mind off half the time. My therapist and I talk about it all the time. Wonderful anxiety. But we look at rest like it is one noted. So with all the stuff that I talk about, I like to talk about, oh, that could have been tragic. I like to talk about the world of mental wellness. And it breaks down into 4 pillars. And so there is one that is specifically rest, but across the board, there are different ways to give your mind, emotions, and physical body, mental, emotional, and physical body a space. So growth pillar, that's where therapy comes in. That's also the coaching, a lot of introspection and brain health, and diet and nutrition. So those are different ways to really build from the inside out. The rest pillar is literally rest, but also includes mindfulness, meditation, sensorial experiences. So aromatherapy, sound baths, those things serve a purpose. All of those things create space for your brain to breathe and relax. Meditation doesn't have to just be sitting and Nam Home Get Cured. It does not have to just be that. I like apps, like I like Headspace. So guided meditation is how I found my way in. There's also soundscapes, which is another way in, and then active meditation. So when I find that I can't even do the apps, I like to do active meditation. So for me, my favorite one, though I cannot find a spot in Charlotte yet, is flying a kite. So I literally use flying a kite as my meditation because I was so focused on keeping it up in the air. That's all I could do. So listen to my music, keep the kite in the air. That's where gardening can come in. A lot of people use running for their active meditation. So finding things where you basically have to hone in on that behavior is a way to meditate and be mindful without just sitting still in silence, because that is very hard if you're like you never do it, you've never done it. And some people will never do that. That doesn't have to be your goal. The play pillar is one of my favorites. Like that's where creativity comes in. Hobbies have a purpose. Playing games have a purpose. Laughter has a purpose. All of those things help your brain connect and talk in different ways. So if you're especially finding yourself clouded, playing is a way to help your brain act in a different way and to sort of spark different things. So playing a game has a function. It's not just for kids. And then last is community, where it is truly friends and family. That's where spiritual or connection to something greater comes in. Nature comes into this, and volunteering. So when you realize that the world of wellness and rest and mental wellness doesn't have to be one noted, or isn't just the 5 things you see, or like is more than just yoga. And even within yoga, there are many variations of it. Like, I love you all, but do not invite me to a yin class because I'm gonna be bored. I am a flow girl. I'm a vinyasa girl. I have to have movement. Otherwise, my brain is everywhere. So exploring is a good way to start, like finding some things that seem somewhat of interest and just starting and trying it and being okay if you find things aren't for you. But blocking your calendar to try something that is familiar that you like, even if you go back to hobbies or habits you used to do when you were younger, that's a good way to start. Getting a buddy, an accountability partner for self-care and fun is another way to start. And yeah, just realizing it's more than just one note. It is not just sitting still in silence.
Yeah, absolutely. You gave so many tips there.
You know, I get to rambling, so hopefully
it was all very good, breaking things down in the pillars. So go to what you're familiar with, go towards play, go towards activity, go towards nature. Like all those things are very, very good suggestions. Team, want to add anything else?
I feel like she did a great job breaking it down and like covering everything. The only thing I would say is for people to realize that rest doesn't look the same for everyone. Everyone's source of rest or what they need is not going to be the same. Not everyone is going to be receptive to yoga, and some aren't going to be receptive to taking the naps. It's just, you know, there's so many, it's a variety of things that she listed, you know, you can pick for yourself, but it's not one noted, like she said.
And it doesn't have to be, you know, for long periods of time either. You know, you can power down in 5 minutes, 1 minute, just breathing. We didn't even talk about breathing. Whew. You know, a deep cleansing breath does wonders. It does wonders. You know, And, you know, I'm not the medical doctor, but I do know that a deep cleansing breath will, you know, it slows down your heart rate, causes you to focus, you know, it just brings you back to center. So start there. Start with just deep cleansing breaths.
Absolutely. Something we all have to do because you'll be dead without it. So
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So
And the best way to do it is 4 seconds on the inhale, 6 seconds on the exhale.
On the exhale, yep. Exhale longer than the inhale. Dr. Daniel, you want to add anything to that before we wrap up?
I was just going to say, I mean, she really covered all of really the bases there. I can just speak from like a personal place. When I find myself getting really just doing something with my hands, like recently I took up candle making. It is really, really silly. But I did ask a group of other medical doctors before, and I just said, what do you guys do to just as a form of self-care? What do you do for resting? So really just don't be afraid to get out there and try something new, anything new, whatever it might be. If you want to go to a woodshop class and you're a girl and you're like, that's not really for ladies, nobody cares, go out there, do it, because it might be fun and you might like it. You might find something that really just allows your brain to just go into a creative space. I also like to play the piano as my outlet. I'm not like, Chick Corea out here. I'm not great at it, but it's one of my happy places. Yes. So just don't be afraid if you find something on Pinterest, if you like to cook, and you want to recreate something. I always find that those are just my personal tip would be that I always find places like that really help me to just kind of get out of the mundane routine, because sometimes routines are great, but they can also be really dangerous. And the fact that they just become the motions that we go through. So I think she really got everything, but breathing definitely keeps.
Breathing for sure. Breathing is one to kind of wrap up. Thank you, Dr. Daniels. Breathing is one to wrap up that question and wrap up our panel. Remember, if you haven't tried resting before, if your family doesn't look at you as someone who rests, if your friends don't look at you as someone who rests, we hope that this panel inspired you today to reconsider how and why you need to rest for the purposes of restoring your body and your mind and keeping you at full tilt, functioning the way that you need to function so that you can be most present, most joyous, and continuing to thrive in your own lives. And we thank you so much for joining us this evening. We want to thank our wonderful guests who took time out of their busy schedules to rest and talk about rest with us. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you all out there in cyberspace. We can't see you, but thank you for coming. Those of you who joined us on the chat. And we hope that we gave you some gems. We hope that we inspired you to rest. And thank you so much. Now, everybody take time off and go rest, go do something. So go from here and go take 5 minutes, start it. If you haven't done it before, go do it now. Go take 5 minutes and start resting. Thank you, everybody.